Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 157. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jose Ucar. Jose is an international communication and influence expert with over a decade of experience working with businesses such as Procter Gamble and SEAT-CUPRA. His actionable strategies for business leaders expose hidden barriers to effective communication, bridge cultural gaps, ignite positive influence, and amplify global impact. Jose is the author of the bestseller book, Global Influence. He's also a TEDx speaker and host, a professional speaker, a leadership and communication trainer, a speaking coach, and founder of Jose Ucar Ltd. His writing has been featured on Yahoo Finance and Yahoo News, Disrupt Magazine, LA Weekly, and The Influencer Age. Jose, so glad to have you on the show today.
Naftali, thank you for having me. Fantastic introduction. You know what? Sometimes I forget how much I've done, and I keep on thinking I haven't done enough. So, hey, thank you for the reminder.
That's good. You know, that was quite a bit, actually. It kind of tired me out just reading through that bio. But on a more serious note, I am glad you mentioned that. Before we get into who you are and everything that we're going to discuss in our conversation today, you raise an important point that I think I'd like to emphasize, if that makes sense, and certainly take the opportunity to add to what you said before. You know, I've written 2 books myself. I have a podcast. I do many things in my professional career, and maybe because I'm a doer, maybe because both of us have that instinct, we feel like we haven't done anything, and we feel like we haven't accomplished, and we're always chasing the next thing. And the truth is, that's a good thing, because that keeps us going, and that keeps us growing, and it keeps us impacting and all of that. On the other hand, we do need to take time and pause and say, you know, I've accomplished something meaningful. If it all ended here, and God willing, it's not going to end for a long time, but if it all ended here, I'd love to be able to look back and say, people have benefited, not only hopefully my wife and my family, but my clients and people in my community at large have benefited from my existence. In other words, me being here has made the world and the lives of individuals better as a result. So I thank you for giving us the opportunity to pause and reflect and to think. And now we get to hear you, not scripted, not reading the bio, but just telling us a little bit more about who you are and how you got here.
Wow, who am I and how I got here? Well, I will always share, and this is how I like to start my story. I am doing what I do today, and I need to take you back to when I was 5, because all for me has always been about being international, connecting with people across nations. But Naftali and people listening, when I was 5, I remember, and it's one of the few things I remember from a conversation with my mom. She asked me, Jose, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I remember not saying I want to be a lawyer. I never did. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a teacher. I said to my mom, I want to be international. I didn't know what that meant. And even today, that keeps evolving. But as you mentioned, for me, it is all about impacting people positively across nations or even across the desk. That has become, I would say, my purpose. And whenever I'm being hard on myself, whenever I'm deciding to do something else with my life, keep on pushing forward, I do it really because I want to see change. And it's not about seeing change in the world, because I haven't got that reach yet. But even if I see change in one person at a time, through coaching, through some of my videos, through someone reading my book, that means a lot. And that is mission accomplished today. Moving forward, of course, I want to do much more. So if I summarize that, it's all about positive impact, getting people to shift their thinking and move towards what they want, not what I want, not what anyone else's want. I want it to be international. I am international. Could I be more? Yeah, maybe. But hey, going back to, again, what you said, being grateful for even being here having this conversation with you. So I'll stop it there.
Great. Okay. Well, you used a word just now in your response. You used many words, obviously, but one word in particular was impact. And then in the bio, I read about influence. And it's kind of interesting because I actually, besides for the books that I've written a few ebooks, and one of them I call the 3 I's of effective leadership. And it's impact, it's integrity, influence, and impact. Those are the 3 that I focus on. I'm curious to know how you how you define impact, how you define influence. And I know you were talking in the context of you helping others, I assume as a coach, but let's take it to the context of many of the listeners who are in a more standard leadership position. So what does it look like for a leader who wants to be a person of impact, and they also want to be a person of influence? Because oftentimes we throw around these buzzwords. What do they really mean? Are they the same? Are they different? How would you define them? And what are some examples of what that looks like when a leader really is providing that for themselves as well as for those that they lead?
Naphtali, I'll start with influence, and I sometimes do mix them up as well. I have to say, whenever I speak about influence, whenever I speak about impact, the thing for me is that positive transformation that you get at the end. So I achieved that through coaching, but in the past, I was a leader myself. So for leaders out there, it all starts with the intention of getting people to improve and shift. And when I speak about shift, it's shifting a behavior, shifting a conduct, okay, that they have, a pattern in order to help them improve. And this is an ongoing process, because as we're working with our people, we will see opportunities for change and improvement on a daily basis. An example, I'm passionate about the communication piece. It's one of the things I tend to focus the most within my leadership sessions, leadership training as well that I do. And I touch on 3 things every time. I cannot go without them. One is the ability to convey information. And within conveying information, it can be presenting, but I specifically like to focus on feedback. The ability to provide effective feedback that gets people, again, to think, to notice the impact they're having, and to change. Then, of course, coaching. Leaders as coaches, it's not just because you are a coach. No, leaders have the responsibility to coach their people, and not just by telling, but also by asking very good questions, which, believe it or not, nowadays, during my sessions, I still find people not asking enough quality questions to get people to think by themselves and on their feet as well. And then finally, the third one, conflict. I always invite and I help trainers and I help people that come to my sessions and leaders to embrace conflict. Conflict is not a positive nor a negative thing. It's how we manage it that makes the difference. If we manage it right, then the opportunities for growth and development are fantastic. So whenever people say to me, well, how do I become a great leader? How can I improve the performance of my team? Become a very good conveyor in terms of presenting information to others. Become a great coach and become a challenger, which is the strategy or the figure I use when I speak about conflict. So those would be those 3 points to answer your question.
Okay, so let's go a little bit further with conflict. I want to make sure I understand. I think probably others, when they heard what you were saying, also were wondering a little bit in terms of your statement. I'm not arguing whether conflict is good or bad. That part I totally understand. What I'm wondering is, what would be the context of the conflict that you're inviting? And what is the intention of having that conflict, and where do you take it so that it ultimately ends up in a good place?
Yes. Well, conflict, the premise is that it can create further connections, okay, between people by addressing the things we generally don't want to say. So the conflict in this occasion might be something I'm disagreeing with, but I'm not saying it. So my invitation is to always find a way to say what's uncomfortable and then present it in a way that can lead to a healthy conversation. Okay? As we know, when it comes to conflict, we can get emotional. We're not used to it. So that's why this is an important practice. And I tend to talk about 5 handling conflict methods, not by me, but by Thomas and Kilman, where it can give people more tools because they begin to recognize when it can be good to avoid a conversation that's difficult, when it can be good to compete and actually push for your point, that thing that you want to put across. When is it good to accommodate the other person's view? When is it good to compromise halfway? Or when is it good to actually sit down and collaborate? So what this does is it gives people more resources. Oh, I'm avoiding this conversation because I don't want to have it. Hold on a second. Are you avoiding it because you don't want to have it or because it's not the right time? I want people to be more logical and conscious about the decisions they make with conflict.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm actually hearing that in the way that you're using conflict, what I would often call difficult conversations. In other words, conversations that we need to have, because oftentimes when people think of conflict, they think of it like I'm starting up with you, so to speak, like I'm picking a fight. So in my mind, to turn it into a difficult conversation is easier for me to work with because of the fact that, you know, oftentimes we'll have conversations that are necessary. A person's work style, a person's performance, some other factors are contributing to an unhealthy element within the environment, or a lack of productivity or something similar. So the question becomes, you have to say something. We often try to avoid it because it's not pleasant. But if you don't deal with it, then it festers, and you don't get improvement, you don't get change, and you just get more and more frustration, and things go from bad to worse, and then you're left with fewer and fewer options. So nipping it in the bud is really important. Let's stay, if I can, for a minute, Jose, in the communication space, if you will. And I'm curious to know, what are some of the hidden cultural barriers that you've noticed in global business communication? And how can leaders effectively navigate them? You know, as you talked about being international, people are now connecting with others all over the world. Cultures are different, even though we know each other's cultures probably better than we have in the past because there's so much more interconnectivity. The reality is cultures still are very, very different, nation to nation, region to region, etc. And so I imagine that affects communication in a significant way. And I'm curious to know what has been your experience there, and how do you help leaders to bridge that gap?
Yes. One of the things I did when I started writing the book was to look at ways in which we could begin to simplify the way in which we communicate, especially across cultures and when we communicate with people in countries that speak English as a second language, because most of my work has been between Spanish and English. And I came up with a simpler method, okay? And the simpler method, I'm gonna share them quickly, are a series of steps that people, regardless of where you are in the world, people can take and follow in order to start establishing better connections with others. And the S of the simpler model starts with slowing down. Okay, slowing down is one of the best ways you can, again, take a step back, okay, slow down your thinking, and to start thinking about the person that you're communicating with, the person that you have in front of you, okay, being this person anywhere in the world. Then the I for intention. We've spoken a little bit about impact, wanting to influence, intention. What do you want to get out of that interaction? Every time, be intentional. Then the M, a multicultural lens. And then a multicultural lens, we may not have it because I haven't traveled to every single country in the world. I don't know all of the different cultures. There are thousands of them. But then through a multicultural lens, what this does is for you to be more curious, for you to open up a little bit to what you don't know, for the unknown. What am I going to be finding when I meet, for instance, Naphtali today, and we speak about business, or we speak about something specifically, or the lack of performance? Then the P for preconceptions. We bring, and depending on the people we deal with, depending on the country they're from, most of the time we already have preconceptions about that culture, the people in there, and we bring those to our interactions. So challenge those because we are all unique. Then the language, check in the language, the level of the language of that person speaking, especially in a second language, English, yeah, and I've been there a lot of the time, and I have many stories where I struggle. What's the other one? Always have an energetic engagement, okay? And this energetic is not about being overexcited, but really wanting to have a conversation with that person. That transcends any culture. It really builds connections when you want to meet someone. And finally, the R for reflection. Always, after an interaction, if that situation didn't work as you expected it, always go back. How could I have done it differently? What could I have improved? Okay, and in that way, you keep on going around the simpler method, always improving the way in which you communicate with any human being. Okay, this is any human being worldwide.
Okay, wow. So let me ask you a different question. Can you share one or two of your favorite techniques, please, that leaders can apply immediately to improve their communication and influence? I want something immediate. I don't have patience. I'm hearing this great guy, Jose, and he's sharing wisdom, but I want to put something into practice today. What would you recommend?
Tailor your communication to the person in front of you. This is the rapid fire one or not yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Elaborate a little bit more if you'd like.
Okay.
What does it look like? What does it look like to tailor your communication?
Tailoring your communication.
Guide me here.
Yes. We show different patterns, different traits, different preferences in the language we share. So tailoring is actually making sure that what I'm telling you is landing for the other person. It's landing for Napil. It's landing for Steven, who is a guy I work with, who's based at the moment in Kenya.
So how do you check for that? How do you determine that what you're saying is actually landing?
Especially when I delegate something and that thing doesn't get done. One of the challenges I face with people as well, with leaders, they say, yeah, but we've delegated this and it didn't get done as we expected it. Well, how did you check understanding? For me, checking understanding is just asking Steven, and I put Steven as an example. Steven, please walk me through it. How do you see this happening? What did you understand from what I've shared with you? And what I found from my time is that there are the people that really like detailed information. Yes, the analytics of this world. There are the people that like it short and sweet. There are the people that like more engagement, a bit more of a story behind it, an explanation. There are the people that appreciate more connection. And I've come to understand that then, for instance, Steven likes things presented in detail, one step at a time, and then Steven goes, does them, comes back to me. So there is a bit of a back and forth, which is very different to my style, because I've always been, let's do this, ABC, off you go, bang. So tailoring is about considering all of this, checking in how the message is landing. Is it being understood? Is actually Steven delivering what I expect him to deliver? What are the obstacles he's facing? How can I help him overcome them? And then this is when the combination of the conveying information that I mentioned, the coaching in asking questions and checking in, and even the disagreements, the conflict, the healthy conflict, if you want to call it something, all come together. And those are the strategies I tend to use the most.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you hit on that, because one of the trainings that I do relates to personality styles. And I think it's important for leaders to know that we all have different styles of how we interact, how we take in information, how we lead other people. And we oftentimes think that our style is everybody's style. Like, why wouldn't everybody think the way I think? Because it comes so naturally and intuitively to me. I would expect everybody to be the same, which is why it's so important, whether you're a teacher of students, whether you're a leader of people, to know that your style is one of many, and that others would benefit oftentimes from delivery of information or something else in a manner that might be completely the opposite of the way that it works best for you. Now, you won't necessarily know until you have everyone do an assessment or just have enough conversations where you're getting feedback to start to put together the picture and to figure out that for so-and-so, I need this particular approach. Or in order for the team to benefit, I need to present the information in a variety of ways and give them different opportunities for engagement. Because this way, you now know, hopefully, that it's landed.
Correct.
So let me ask you about your book. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? I know you started talking about it before. What's the story behind global influence, and why should people be picking up a copy?
Well, I decided to write this book. It's something I wanted to do for a long time. And I wanted to share, in a way, it's not just my story, but everything I've learned until last year when I released the book. So it's a compilation of my travels, my challenges, and all the practical tools and tips that helped me and have helped the people I've worked with to be more authentic, more confident, and greater communicators. This is the essence of it. Since I've been working mainly with leaders throughout my time, being aspiring leaders or leaders that have been in the role for a while, I made it more around leadership. But still, the essence is communication. So anyone who wants to communicate more effectively, be more open to different cultures, learn how to tailor their style depending on the person they're communicating with, become better coaches, enjoy what I call that healthy conflict, mainly around, those difficult conversations that you mentioned, Naphtali. I would say then, global influence would be for you. I also share some of my strategies for public speaking, which is actually how I started into this field as a public speaking coach, which I still do. And all of that creates global influence with the intention of making that worldwide impact, one person at a time. That'd be my summary.
Since you mentioned public speaking and you are a public speaking coach, what would you say is, I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of fear around public speaking, as you know. What would you say is the most common mistake that you see people making as it relates to public speaking, either in their preparation or in their delivery? And what would be a tip that you could share? Maybe it could be the flip side of that, or it could be something different. What would be a tip that you could share that would help everybody, even the biggest novice, the newest person, never got up in front of more than 2 or 3 people in their lives, to help them feel more comfortable immediately and more on point?
Well, the biggest mistake I see people making over and over again, and I do sometimes, is not controlling our internal dialogue. Since we tend to fear being in front of people, and even I have done this for many years, and I still get not fear, but a level of nervousness. I get those nerves still in there. So it's important that we learn to manage our thinking. If you don't like public speaking, and all you do is, I hate public speaking, I'm not very good at public speaking. Well, in a way, you are creating your own reality. So my invitation is to create an intervention, interrupt the thinking process, and begin to think in a more optimistic way. When people come to my sessions, I hate it. Okay, what could you change that for? As you said, Natalie, what is a more positive way to think about it? What would be the benefit of you speaking in public a bit more often? How would it impact your career, your development? And I begin with some leading questions to take them towards, hopefully, a better outcome in terms of what they do. That would be the first and one of the best things. We begin to interrupt and play with our mind, then our performance will improve.
Awesome. So I want to come back to a word you used before. I know we've talked about integrity. You talked about leaders being authentic. It's another word that I think is used a lot without necessarily having, for many of us, a clear definition of what it is or examples of what it looks like. Do you see authenticity as being different than integrity? Do you see them as similar? And specifically with authenticity, what would be examples of leaders who are living a more authentic life and leading from a more authentic place?
Look, what I found in terms of authenticity is being comfortable in your own skin and sharing from that stance. I am where I am today because of many different people that have impacted my life. But then I have Alan Pierce, who's always been a pioneer, who always stood his ground and shared from that position. And being authentic doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes or anything. We're still human beings, but we find a place inside where we are comfortable and that we respect and appreciate about ourselves, and that we understand is still developing, moving forward, but yet we look to do our best from that standpoint and we don't hide it. That's why for me, that conflict resolution, the difficult conversations, I keep on going back to it. When we are open enough to share all of these things, that has to do with a level of authenticity. When we go and speak in public in a way that is real to us, that means we've sorted out loads of things we have inside. So we're more in connection with ourselves. This is my way of explaining authenticity. I believe I'm authentic, okay? May not be all the time, but when I'm being authentic is when I'm speaking right now with you, Naphtali, and I'm making mistakes, and I'm potentially, my English is not 100% because I have good days and bad days, but I'm still here and I'm still giving it my best, and I know tomorrow I can be better or worse. This is authenticity, all of that. It's still a bit vague and it's unique to each one of us, but if I could summarize it, I would say it's being comfortable with who you are as a leader, as a person, and projecting yourself from there.
So I'm going to ask you a final question for this segment, which is going to force you to think in an authentic type of way. And that is, what would you say, Jose, was the biggest mistake that you have made so far, in many cases, that ultimately propelled you for greater success?
Listening to feedback from, well, especially the feedback that I didn't like. So listening to feedback that I didn't like and implementing it. And I'll share this with you. Rigor was one of those things that came up for me years ago. Not being rigorous enough in terms of my preparation and my deliveries and my training sessions. And I hated it. Also because it wasn't delivered as, Jose, you need more rigor. No, it was delivered in a way that was also a bit aggressive. And of course, I disliked it, but I decided to take that on board. So moving forward, every time I receive something I don't like, I explore it, and very likely I implement it as soon as I can. And I keep on making mistakes, and I know I'll keep on making mistakes. That will never change. But hopefully, those mistakes are a little bit different and lead me to, yeah, as I like to say, higher places in my development.
Okay, I hope you're ready for some rapid fire. We're going to jump right into this one. A hidden benefit of delivering a TEDx talk.
Credibility and connections.
Nice. A common communication. Oh, we actually did this one, I think, already. A common communication mistake people make.
Well, I spoke about, was that the public speaking one? I would say, yeah, your mindset. Your mindset. So play with your mindset to play your, use your mindset to your favor.
Your go-to activity for clearing your mind.
Exercising.
Okay. Author, speaker, trainer, coach. If you could only do one all day, it would be?
Speak.
Okay. A message for a billboard along the in America, we'd call it the interstate. I'm not sure what they call it in the UK.
Yeah,
a place with a lot of traffic. What's that? Motorway, right. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
So what's the message?
Oh, it's right. So the message for the billboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would see, live intentionally, love fully, and learn constantly. That would be my three things.
Okay. A culture you'd like to get to know better.
The Chinese culture.
Chinese. And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
Eating well and taking short breaks.
Nice. Jose, you've shared a lot. Let people know, please, where they can find you, learn more about your work, possibly work with you. Where would they go?
The easiest way is Google. If you type Jose Ucar, there are, I think, 2 to 3 Jose Ucars in the world. My dad, myself, and a cousin. So you very likely will find me, my website, joseucar.com, all of my social media.
Fantastic. Yeah, I don't think my name is very common or popular either.
That
So leave us, Jose, please, with one final life lesson to wrap up our episode.
Look, live intentionally. Wake up in the morning and think about the impact you want to create, and look to improve people's lives, and you will see your life improving along the way.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation a lot. Certainly a lot of the things that I think about and work with my clients on. So it speaks to me personally, and I'm sure it speaks to everybody who's been listening as well. So thank you very much, Jose, for joining me from the UK to have this conversation. You've been all over the world, and we have benefited from your experience and from your wisdom. And I wish you much continued success in all that you do.
Likewise, Naphtali. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.